Welcome to the Reality OS. I'm Peter Duke, and Tracy Connors and I are joined today with one day I'll get this right. We're joined with.
I told you just to skip it and just start talking.
Oh, we just start typing. Michael Parker. Hi, Michael Parker. How are you?
Hello, Peter. Hello, Tracy.
Hello, Michael Parker.
Michael Parker and I have known each other for a long time. He and I both worked at the Virgin Megastore online. I think that we were the original two hires.
Actually, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you may be right, yeah.
Yep, and I remember the first day that I met Michael, he was talking to me about all of this strange stuff that I had never heard of before, and I kind of wrote it off, I think, and didn't pay too much attention to it. But as years have gone by, and I've become more and more skeptical of mainstream media news, a lot of the things that Michael had mentioned to me very early, like, just kind of off the cuff, casual conversations, started to become more and more manifest. And now at this point, I look at Michael, on the same level as guys like Jay Dyer or where am I going?
If Jay Dyer is listening, why did you block me, bro? I like your work.
Wait, Jay Dyer blocked you?
Yeah, a long time ago, because I watched one of his videos. I really enjoyed it. You actually sent it to me. And then I was like, I'm going to go follow him on Twitter. And I'm like, I'm blocked. I'm like, I don't know what I said. But I have said a lot of things. So maybe I said something.
I will DM him and I'll ask him to.
Is he from Texas originally or something?
I want to say, I'm not sure. I think he lives in North Carolina now. I think.
Anyway, I like your work, Jen. Okay.
Anyway, James Corbett was the other guy I was thinking of. I mean,
right on.
Michael, you mention any kind of occult or conspiracy theory, and Michael knows the sources. He had his own show on. Was it the Lip.tv? Was that the name?
I've had a few shows. I started out with a show called Dark Matter, and then I got signed to Discovery for a little bit to do a show for them. Went through the whole thing, and then they canned the show. It never aired. And then I tried to get another show off the ground called The Electric Pyramid. We did about 30 episodes of that, and then I did Antidote for Lip TV, which was really a blast. And I would still be doing it, but they eventually went out of business. Sean Stone had a show on that channel as well. There was about 6 or 7 different hosts who had shows, and that was a really good time.
And you did some great interviews on that show. You interviewed Dave McGowan before he passed away.
My first interview, I actually interviewed him twice. Once for Electric Pyramid, and then when I got this gig for Antidote, he was the first person I reached out to because he was such a cool guy. And I figured, well, you know what? I think this is the right thing to do my first episode with. And he was glad to do it. Super great guy. And he did die 8 months later.
Yeah. It's a tragedy because his work was is really kind of important, I think, for a lot of people who are trying to figure out what's going on with kind of MK Ultra in Los Angeles and those types of things. Well, our subject today, you and I were, we traded tweets or something this morning because Mick Jagger and Dave Grohl put out this song that yesterday when I heard it the first time, I kind of thought it was an anthem for getting rid of the lockdown, or excuse me, and then you pointed out to me that Jagger is kind of making fun of conspiracy theories, and that the things that I was taking as compliments were kind of tongue in cheek. And then you turned me on to the fact that there's a big controversy that was started with Van Morrison, and as I started to dig into it, I realized that Van Morrison and Eric Clapton have done 3 different anti-lockdown songs. And then this almost seems to be like a response by Mick Jagger, and I'm not sure how much Dave Grohl had to do with the lyrics per se, because in the interviews that I watched where he was talking about it, it seemed like Mick had already written the song and he just wanted Dave to work on it with him. But Bruce Springsteen also kind of has lent his celebrity to billboards, I think in the Northeast, where they're telling people to mask up and keep their masks on and stuff. And so it seems like there's the reaction against Van Morrison and
Clapton.
Eric Clapton has been pretty harsh. I read some pretty harsh articles here. I can share one here, I think. Van Morrison criticizes fascist bullies in anti-lockdown COVID song, and then I can bring up another one.
But this was months and months ago.
That was he mentioned the songs or started putting out the songs in August. Clapton's tune, I think, came out in December. So there was 3 songs that Van Morrison did, and then 1 song that Van Morrison wrote that Clapton performed. So there's 4 songs in total, and the proceeds from these songs went to a charity that Van Morrison created to benefit musicians in Northern Ireland who, were out of work. And he went as far as creating a petition to the government saying, listen, when are you going to let us get back to work? And when are you going to provide data regarding the science of COVID?
Right. And so Mick Jagger comes out with this song, and
Why am I looking at Urkel?
I don't know. It's interesting. I refreshed this a couple of times, thinking that how videos play and then they move on to the next video, and I don't know. They have this Urkel story under Mick Jagger here, so I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, he's written this song called "Easy Sleazy," and some of the lyrics are shooting the vaccine, Bill Gates in my bloodstream. It's mind control. The earth, but then Jagger sings on the track in a verse he calls a piss take on conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. So he takes those and then he adds, the earth is flat and cold, it's never warming up, the Arctic's turned to slush, the second coming's late, there's aliens in the deep state. So, this is kind of what I refer to as cat poop sushi, right? It's like, if you have a legitimate concern about something that may be misreported in the news, what you do is you add something to it that's completely extreme and off the rails in order to completely discount it. And so when I see Mick Jagger adding, the COVID controversy to flat Earth, there's flat Earth people and there's COVID people and there's COVID conspiracy people, and there's certainly a certain amount of overlap on those, but I would hearken to say that most of the people who believe in the COVID conspiracy still believe that we live on a sphere, and
right.
So what Jagger has done here is that he's done that a little bit of that cat poop sushi thing, where he's put those two things together, and the song is what it is. I mean, of the 4 songs. And obviously we can't play them here because we get copyright strikes. So,
right. And we should note the Jagger Grohl song came out yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it already has more views, I think, than all of the other songs put together.
Well, you're talking about Jagger, Clapton, and Van Morrison are all aging boomers, if not older. I don't even know if they're too old to be boomers, but it's boomer music. So you got Grohl, and he crosses into Gen X. Millennials would have listened to him too because he's in Queen's. What was it? What's his Foo Fighters after Nirvana? So he has more cultural relevance, I suppose. So that's why I would imagine they would get more hits. Plus, I'm sorry, all of the songs suck as far as I'm concerned, and the lyrics are all so right on the nose. There's no metaphor invoked at all.
You're right.
It's a little bit hokey.
Yes,
I was like, oh, geez, where's Roger Waters when I need him? He should be against this, I would say.
Yeah, where is Roger Waters on all of this?
I'll find out.
Okay, you'll find out while Michael and I talk about it. Because Michael's the rock and roller. Michael had a band. You have a band.
I've had a bunch of bands in my life. I've put out records. Rock and roll is the thing that I love more than anything else. And at the end of the day, that's thing that, I love information, and, I've read a lot of conspiracies and people think I'm that, but really I love music and I just love information. The Rolling Stones, and, my wife is probably ready for me to stop playing the Rolling Stones because I play them all the time and I love them. I mean, I love the Rolling Stones. I'm a huge Stones freak. I love Bowie. I love all of the English rock and roll, Led Zeppelin, Elton John. Jimi Hendrix was from Seattle, but he made it England. Anyway, I love all of that. But I also came up during indie music. And this is just an aside. Those people who know me from Texas know that I owned a punk rock club with my brother. And we paid Nirvana $100 to play our club in 1989. And it was, I saw the contract online today. Somebody had gotten it somehow. It said $100 versus 50% of the door. And I wish it's funny, I didn't go to the club that night. And my brother ran the club. And, but anyway, it's kind of for Nirvana fans, it's kind of like a big deal. Oh my God. And there's a Nirvana documentary called Montage of Heck, which I haven't seen. My brother, I think, appears in it for a second, walking down the street carrying a burrito. I haven't watched it because my brother died in 2010, and it's something I don't like to. I don't go back to any of that. I don't like to look into it. Anyway,
I think I saw a montage of Heck.
Yeah, you probably did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I came up playing indie rock. I've made records. Rock and roll music is my life, and but also I was into UFOs as a kid, and that's what led me into learning all of these other things that Peter and I have discussed. And I can't believe I divulged all that information upon meeting somebody, but I was pretty full of myself at that point. So,
oh yeah, you weren't alone. Yeah, it's interesting because once I realized that was a diss on COVID, it just made me go back to all of the Tavistock,
yes.
Conspiracies. Mick Jagger, a lot of people don't know, graduated from the London School of Economics, which was a Rockefeller, funded school that's got a lot of ties to things like the.
Well, it definitely came out of the Milner world, right? I mean, I think it's the Fabian Socialists founded it, I want to say.
Right. So and then you've got the Tavistock Institute also, which, there's all kinds of rumors about the Beatles and the Stones. Yep. John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote the first Rolling Stones hit single.
Is that true, or is that just a rumor that's going?
No. It's true. And if you guys want to talk, I'll go Google it or somebody.
They did a bunch of covers initially. I mean, they, like all rock and rollers at that point, did covers of the old blues and also Chuck Berry and Presley tunes. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe I didn't know about that, but maybe
their first charting single was written by Paul McCartney and John Lennon.
So is this like the answer to Laurel Canyon?
Well,
it would have predated Laurel Canyon, but
it
sounds like what you're saying is it's like the prototype then for Laurel Canyon.
Right. And the rumors are that like Theodore Adorno had some kind of relationship with the Tavistock Institute, and that they were going to use pop music in order to reconquer the United States of America, hence the British invasion. And all of that other rhetoric that went along with that. Right. And so when I saw that, I thought, maybe somebody from Tavistock is calling in a favor. Hey, Mick, we need you to do this. Wink, wink.
I'm just surprised they're not leaning on the younger pop stars.
Well, Dave Grohl is,
Dave Grohl's in his late 40s, if not in his 50s at this point.
Right.
What I'm saying is they're not using the Cardi B's or any of those people to put out music that's specifically talking about stay at home and behave and wear your mask.
Well, I would suggest that there's probably a portfolio approach going on. They probably have those things going into multiple genres with multiple artists.
I would argue they don't have to, because I have two teenage daughters, and I mean, the schools indoctrinate you to such an extent that you don't even have to go counterculture to convince them. It's just so impressed upon them that you're going to do this thing that they don't think twice about it. But I wanted to say this about Jagger, because when I was texting with Peter this morning, I mean, Jagger's a very clever and sophisticated guy. And when I said that, this was a anti-conspiracy type thing, if you look at what he's done in the lyrics, he does a typical Mick Jagger lyricist thing, which I think Jagger's a brilliant lyricist. This isn't exactly an example of that, but some of the songs that he's written, I think, are very, very good. Sympathy for the Devil, Gimme Shelter are some of my favorite songs of all time, period. But in this song, he wants it both ways. He wants to bemoan the fact that we're all having to stay at home and we're watching TV and we're watching Zoom and we're cleaning the sink and we're getting fatter. And for him, it means he can't make, millions and millions and millions of dollars in touring. But then, so he's, complaining along with us, these are all the downsides of it. He's talking about the big pricks who, I'm not sure if he's talking about Fauci or who he's talking about in that line. But later, when you get down into the song, there's that one verse in which Peter spoke about. And this is where I'm saying he wants it both ways, because he wants us all to bro down on the fact that he's suffering the same way we are, although he's on a 49-acre giant estate with a castle on it while we're in our homes. But then he wants to make it appear that these bad conspiracy people who are also anti-vaxxers and flat earthers, they're the ones who are going to stand in the way of you being free again and us being able to get back to this Garden of Eden type 1920s roaring, woo, let's party kind of thing, which I think is total bullshit. But at the same time, he's Mick Jagger. And not only does he want it both ways, he wants it every way, because he's freaking Mick Jagger of the Rolling freaking Stones, who always gets everything he wants all the time. So on one hand, I think he's just having fun. On the second hand, he knows which side his bread is buttered. On the third hand, he's kind of just covering all of his cases. And number four, he's just trying to stay relevant. Enter Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl, probably a super nice guy. Everything I've ever heard about Dave Grohl seems that he's a nice guy. So Jagger writes a tune, having fun with it. He writes the lyrics really quickly. He writes the tune. Then he calls up Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl, will you be on this song? Of course, Dave Grohl is not going to say no. So Dave Grohl then does a lion's share of the work, recording all the guitars, the bass, and the drums. Who wouldn't want to do that? But the other thing that struck me about this song is if you listen to it, the first time I listened to it, I've only listened to it a few times, probably 3 or 4 times, it's like, wow, he's doing Johnny Rotten. If you listen to it, there's a couple of times where Jagger, I think, intentionally mimics Johnny Rotten, now known as Johnny Lydon. Well, the Sex Pistols were legitimate anti-establishment band. And some people would say that Johnny Rotten was a full-on nihilist. And the Stones, initially, if all the Tavistock stuff is not true, which, I'm not convinced. Even with Dave McGowan, who I love, I'm not convinced everything he said is legitimate. These people loved rock and roll like we did. So, of course, they want to play blues. And I think you find a couple of those kids, you might help a little along. But so the Stones were anti-establishment, just as the real punk rock was anti-establishment. And so Jagger's really trying to convince me in this tune with this up-tempo, more kind of heavy rocking than the Stones usually do. He's trying to sound like Johnny Rotten, and he's doubling up on bringing in Grohl to cross over into alt rock, which is really corporate rock to me these days. I'm not even a Foo Fighters fan. I mean, they've always been too bland for me. Love Nirvana, but Foo Fighters never interested me. But anyway, I was always bothered that he stopped playing drums, because I thought he was the best drummer in rock and roll. I would not disagree with that. He is an awesome drummer, and he's a good singer and a decent guitar player. So I don't want to bag on it. It's just for Foo Fighters, for me, I'm like, it's kind of a step down. But maybe I'm over analyzing Jagger, but what I'm saying is he's a very sophisticated man. And while a majority of this tune may be tongue in cheek, I think he's also aware of what he's saying. And if you look at the verse status, I think he's sticking the dagger in. Now that brings up Peter's point. Is this a return, or is this a battle with guys like Clapton and Van Morrison? I didn't think about that initially, but he did say in that Rolling Stone article, this was my piss take on conspiracy theory, because I'd be talking to friends and family on the phone, and you can't really talk to them. So maybe that is some of the people that he's talking about, is Van Morrison and Clapton. Right. Here's while you were talking, I found that it's "I Want to Be Your Man" was their first hit. I Want to Be Your Dog is what I'm sorry. Okay. And but that also brings up, you mentioned Sympathy for the Devil earlier. Wasn't there a lyric in Sympathy of the Devil that conspiracy theorists say that Jagger had to change because it had something to do with the JFK assassination? Yeah, who killed the Kennedys? We all did, and it's something to that effect. And I just think that's really good socio-political lyrics. Who killed the Kennedys? Basically we all did. And
except I think the rumor was there was a different answer. Like he was naming a name, and they told him that he couldn't do that. So
that I don't know about. Perhaps.
I think I read that in Michael A. Hoffman, maybe Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. I think maybe he talks about that in there. Anyway. So it's interesting, for people who don't know the Tavistock conspiracy. The idea is that there was a cultural institute founded. It's a real place in London in the I don't know when they were funded, but in the 1960s, the conspiracy goes that they were working to create acts like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones in order to be able to reconquer the United States of America through culture. And I always found it was interesting that that it was called the British Invasion, after and the idea was that they couldn't beat us kinetically, so they had to beat us culturally. Which kind of dovetails with all of the, Frankfurt School critical theory.
Well, you were saying Adorno was involved, or you thought, so he's part of that gang.
Yep, and I just watched Hail Caesar again this weekend, this last couple of days. I don't know have you ever seen Hail Caesar? It's Curtis Yarvin. I was talking to Curtis Yarvin one day, and he asked me if I had seen it, and I told him no, and he got very animated and said that has to be the next thing that you watch. Like, you can't talk about any of this stuff if you don't watch it. But the movie is basically about a bunch of Hollywood writers who kidnap a movie star, communist Hollywood writers, and kidnap a movie star and shake down the studio. And it's an incredibly thought-provoking film. One of not Theodore Adorno, Edward Marcuse is actually one of the characters in the movie. So anyway, but jumping back to Tavistock, the idea is that media and culture has been used in order to control us, and I think that it's undeniable that that's going on right now, that you can see it, and people are aware of it. What's unclear is whether or not that this has been going on for a long time, and that acts like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles were actually part of some kind of conspiracy. It's interesting because a lot of this stuff takes place in Frankfurt, Germany. A lot of the conspiracy stuff, and isn't that where the Beatles played?
The Cave. They spent that's where they kind of cut their teeth, playing like 4 sets a night. They were young kids, and so you're right.
Yeah, so I just, it's interesting that of all of the cities in the world, it was Frankfurt, Germany, that they were playing 4 nights a week, or 4 gigs a night. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Given that these guys are all, as I pointed out, except for Grohl, older, and their music is, beloved by boomers, is that do you think they're targeting boomers because boomers aren't behaving? I mean, to Michael's point, he was like, you don't need to tell my teenagers to behave. Schools are doing all of that. Yeah. So is this a boomer rebellion?
I saw something yesterday or today, and I don't know if this is true or not. Somebody posted it, and basically it was just some woman who I've never, ever heard of. Somebody posted on Twitter, and supposedly, I guess it was a Tic Tac star with like 400,000 plus followers. And
TikTok.
What did I say? Tic Tac?
Yeah, you've got Tic Tac on the mind.
Yeah, you're thinking of the
TikTok.
We'll talk about Tic Tac in a minute.
Okay, so TikTok. So anyway, this thing, and like I say, I don't know if this particular example is true, but it doesn't surprise me if it is. And somebody else was posting about this woman, and this woman says to camera, "Hey, listen, not telling you what to do, but just so you know." And this woman, she seemed like some nice Southern lady. But suppose he has this 500,000 followers, and she goes, "I was offered several $1,000s by a couple of different companies to do videos of me getting the vaccine." And I think there is a full court press media thing. You got to get the shot. You got to get the press. So does it extend down to TikTokers? Probably. I don't know where the money's coming from, but does it matter? It could be coming from a lot of different places. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's out of line to think that even social media people are being compensated to influence others. And which, to your point, Tracy, are they trying to reach boomers? Probably. They're big influencers. Mick Jagger is a major influencer, maybe to old people like me. But
my daughter is 19. Her favorite T-shirt is her Nirvana T-shirt. You know, so Dave Grohl.
They were a great band.
Yeah,
they were a great band.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Grohl has an impact on the world.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I mean, but to Michael's point, they've got a whole social media, seemingly organic thing of people posting them getting their damn shots. Yeah. I've seen it in my feed on Instagram, and I'm just like, oh my God, guys, really?
Yeah, first it was mask porn, and now it's shot porn.
I know, and I'm trying to think, and Peter, maybe you can help me with this. How do we culture jam that? And I was thinking, is this my guns are made for shooting, not for getting shot? Something along those lines, and just show like it's a weird flex. Like there's so many ways to go with it because you could literally flex, but you're not supposed to flex when you're getting the shot. So yeah. What I'm saying is, can you counter signal by showing off and being like, guys, take vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin B, get some sun, and have some zinc.
Quinine too.
Right.
Well, I spent a day last week with people who were they were barefaced shopping.
Yes.
It's a group of people. They've got a Telegram feed in Los Angeles. I think they're doing it in more than one city, and it's basically a dozen or so people that go. They pick a store, they pick a time, and they go in there, and they all go in there and start shopping at the same time without masks on, and they start rolling their video And I had sworn that I was never going to buy a mask when this whole thing started, but I got an idea the other day, and I went on to I don't know if I got it on Etsy or eBay, but I actually found a full nose face mask that's made out of a mesh material, so it's completely see-through. Like and I bought a couple of them, and my friend and I went to several different places, and it's the ultimate troll. It's much more trolly than wearing a bandana. It's much more trolly than not wearing a mask at all, because basically it's a big F you, right? When people, and I walked into a nursery, and this woman walking out of the nursery said under her breath, "Asshole,"
Yes.
and
you're a bad man, Peter Duke.
In retrospect, as we started to think about it, it really is the ultimate troll, right? Because you're acting as if you are following the rules, and there is nothing that they can say to you because you're actually doing what they're asking you to do. I think that the one place where you probably couldn't get away with it is on an airplane, because they have all of those federal laws that they use in order to stand on your neck.
Peter, can I interrupt you about airplanes? Okay, so at Christmas, my wife and I and my children, we go to Texas to see my father and my sister. And, so my wife wants us to get these particular masks that we thought we were supposed to wear. Because, listen, I've worn a mask the whole time. I don't like it, but I do it because I got stuff to do and I can't be bothered. But so supposedly to fly to Texas, because everybody's, oh, you guys, you're going to fly? Yeah, we're going to fly. And but anyway, we buy these particular N95 masks or whatever. I go around town on a Sunday morning and find them, and I get them for the family. Well, we get to Burbank, they won't let us on with those particular masks. Oh, you can't wear that. You can wear this, handkerchief or these, the piss poor things that we wear all the time, but you can't wear those. Okay, all right, whatever. So we
what was the rationale there?
Anna, what was the rationale? They said that we could breathe through the N95 mask or something. There was something ridiculous at Burbank Airport. My wife's trying to remember why they told us we couldn't wear it. It was something to
expels the stuff.
She said, okay, so the lady tells my wife that we could expel the virus through this N95 mask, which is.
It takes us a good deal.
You can expel the virus through any mask.
That's what of course, anyone with functioning brains knows this is all nonsense. But okay, whatever. I just need to get on a plane. So, we put on our regular mask that we wear and we get on the plane. But also while we're in this is the height of lunacy. While we're in Burbank Airport, which is my favorite to fly out of, because at least it's easier and it's closer to me. But so we have to maintain our 6 feet, social distancing while we're there. Meanwhile, they get us on the plane, and this was American Airlines, I believe. So now I'm sitting by 2 complete strangers within inches, So, I mean, I've worn your mask through your facility. I've stood 6 feet away from all these people. I've done all these things you want me to do, but then you're going to put me in a plane where I am inches from complete strangers, and the whole plane was packed. This is a Christmas trip. So,
Michael, you're trying to apply logic. What's going on? What's wrong?
I know, isn't it? It's ridiculous. I should quit that.
Yeah, I mean,
entirely.
I'm sorry. It's just I mean, that's the clown world that we're in, right?
Yeah.
You just constantly want to be Will Ferrell in Zoolander and stand up and say, "Is everyone taking crazy pills?"
Yeah. I mean, it blew my mind. And when we got to Texas, and mind you, this was Christmas, it was a little bit better. My father lives in an area of West Texas called Abilene, which is a town of like 125,000 people or something. And there's restaurants that we like to go there that I always look forward to going to. But and at this point, I can't remember, but I don't think we could even go to restaurants in LA. I don't remember, but it was just so refreshing to go somewhere where I could sit down and have a meal. And then I would walk through the malls, and it was a little half and half. Some people had masks on, some did not. But what's interesting is after Abbott basically said, a month or so ago, you guys can stop wearing your mask. Well, people went batshit. Pardon me, I don't mean to curse on your show, but people went, oh my God, you're going to kill us all if they take the mask off. Well, here we are, 30 days later, that hasn't happened yet. When I see pictures of people that I know in Texas, they're all still wearing the masks, which I think was the ultimate goal anyway. Let's just train everybody to do everything that we tell them all the time, of which the mask is only a part of it, so that when we tell them they can take it off, they don't want to take it off, which is obvious to a lot of us, but.
Yeah, it's crazy. Someone was telling me yesterday, I can't remember, I'm blanking, that there was actually a conference or something where they were going to give people yellow badges if they had a vaccine. They were legitimately going to give people yellow badges. I thought it was a joke when I first heard it. I thought it was a meme. And then it turned out that it wasn't. And then they had decided that was a bad idea after the fact. It was like, yeah, yellow badges. That's a.
What shape should they be?
As long as we're coming back to Van Morrison and people doing things on the nose. I mean, that was my biggest criticism of those songs.
For sure.
And all, frankly, the Mick Jagger song too. It's like, it's the way that you use culture in order to move society into a direction that you want is that you try to use metaphor a little bit, right? So that people can imagine themselves in those situations. The one that I always like to use is, John Lennon, all you need is love. When you get up in the morning, you realize that you do need, love is great, but you need to make coffee and you need to pay the bills, and
for sure.
All you need is love, money, coffee. Keep
going. And to his credit, I think George Harrison kind of trolled him a little later. But we're going to need a lot of money.
A whole lot of spending. I remember the parody that I think Weird Al did that was called "This Song Is Just 6 Words Long." That was the hook of his version of it.
Yeah, and it was, and I always thought that George was kind of poking John back with that song, but yeah, metaphor is great. It's actually really effective, and I think that when you do things that are really on the nose, that people can't imagine themselves in that situation, or when you put yourself on one side or the other of a political call, you lose the ability to influence people. I think it was Edward Bernays who pointed out that propaganda is only valuable in reinforcing the opinions of people who already agree with you. it doesn't actually change anybody's mind.
Right.
And so
I call it the sweet pill. You've got to get people to come to something on their own. If I tell you something, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I get amped up when I think about these things. I call it the sweet pill because it's like when effective music, effective art, effective film, effective comedy is when I plant a seed in your brain without telling you, and then later you wake up and you're like, holy crap, he was right. I get it now. So when you have that moment of getting it, now you actually take it in. If I tell you something and you reject it outright, if I tell you something that you disagree with, but I say it without tricking you, you just reject it. Well, Michael's crazy and he's actually kind of a jerk for saying that. But if I put it in a way that you then have to encounter it and understand it on your own, now you own it and you get it and it sticks with you.
Right. And that's the hypnosis effect, right? If you take a look at hypnotic patterns, part of the thing that hypnotists do is that they ask you questions that are kind of vague, Milton Erickson style, where you pour yourself into that question. The question isn't saying, are you A or B? The question is saying, what are you? And then you're coming back and you're saying, well, I am this. That's a much more powerful way to get people to get down to the kind of core structure of people's personalities and influence them. And when you're on the nose, that stuff just doesn't work. So
no, and if you think about the songs of the '60s, like the Vietnam War era songs, they weren't like troops are dying left and right. We got to get them home tomorrow night.
You got to get back to the get back to the garden, right? Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I mean, total anti-war song, but not there. There was no. It wasn't that on the nose. So, so what do we think? What do we think this is effective? Do we think that this is going to change anybody's mind?
Mm-hmm. To Tracy's point about them being really lame tunes, I agree. When Ghost Town came out in March of last year, because I'm so pro Stones all the time, it's like I was playing it and my wife was just kind of like, really? Yeah, that's kind of lame. And you know what? It is. I think it's better than this song. But here's the deal. They already had that tune. And they're the Rolling Stones. These are brilliant men that make a lot of money. They're like, hey, we got this one sitting over the dumper over here. I'm going to change a couple of lines. It'd be totally apropos. Even Keith Richards, who is, the punk rock guy to Mick's establishment guy, he even kind of got behind it. The crap has hit the old fan as they were. So it's time to drop this song, Ghost Town. And, it was not a great song. I don't think this song with Grohl is a great song. It's kind of boring. It's too on the nose. Now, Van Morrison, who is a great singer, and I don't dislike Van Morrison or Clapton, but those are boring songs. They're way too on the nose and they're boring, which reminds me of something I wanted to bring up about Clapton. Okay, so when Van Morrison does the 3 songs, if you go onto his Twitter, he is very outspoken on his feeling about how the government shutdown, especially in Ireland, where he is, really put all these people out of work. And if you're going to do that, then you need to tell us when we can go back to work, and you need to provide the science that says all these things that we're doing, like not performing in venues, is going to be effective. If you're not going to do that, then, give these people that make their living doing this, he's got plenty of money, but he's talking about the regular Joe who plays in a bar band, and makes a little bit of money. If you're not going to do that, well, then I'm going to start a petition, which he did. But here's what's interesting to me. I remember last year, all of a sudden, Eric Clapton's a racist. And, I'm not a big Clapton fan. I like his work. He's a good guitar player. I respect him. I never got into Clapton, but I didn't have anything against Clapton. And all of a sudden, these stories about him being a racist were coming up. And it just so happens, this happens immediately after the song that he did with Van Morrison, which is called Stand and Deliver. And I think of these songs, it's actually the one of the 4 that I like the best. Mm-hmm. But anyway, now he did say some reprehensible things, but let's also remember the guy was a junkie. I mean, he was a heroin addict. And it's like, I don't listen to too many heroin addicts on a regular basis, hoping for, profound statements on the social situation. But anyway, and then the other day was his birthday. He's an Aries, I think. And everybody's like, down with Eric Clapton. He's an old guy. He's a racist and all this. I'm like, I don't know. It just, to me, that if you say anything against what they want you to believe, well, we're going to destroy you. And we will dig as deep as we need to dig to find something reprehensible or something that we can say is reprehensible that you did, and just blow it all out of proportion. They're also saying that Van Morrison made racist comments, which I don't know because I was never a fan. I don't know enough about him to know if he made some statements to this effect. But it's interesting that the Rolling Stones and Elvis Presley and Led Zeppelin, who ripped off all the same blues songs from great black blues musicians, I don't see them necessarily being attacked for these things because Jagger's on board.
Led Zeppelin was Jimmy Page was accused but he was accused of ripping off a lot of stuff in the day. You know,
well,
he was.
You know. Have that court case. What was it? 2 years ago about
that was
Stairway?
the Spirit. Yeah, and they won that case. That was Spirit saying that he lifted the opening from a band called Spirit. So yeah, I mean, Peter's right. They did get attacked for that. I'm just saying that they weren't called racist. They were just saying they stole their blues songs, which I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that is the way of art a lot of times, and poets. Right. And did William Shakespeare really write all those stories, or were those folk?
Well, that's a whole other YouTube channel.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but you get the point. I mean, the Clapton thing, I'm not. If he said those things and said them on a regular basis, that's pretty reprehensible. He said it at a concert. Yeah, not good, but it's interesting that somebody dug it up almost immediately upon the release of that song, and it's been very effective.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. You know, if you say something that's not in line, then they'll figure it out. They'll figure out something that you said, and if you didn't say it, they'll make it up. You know,
that's right.
And along those lines, one of the things that I've been trying to get a hold of a script that was written in 2007. This is a sidebar. Called "I Want to F Your Sister" by a screenwriter named Melissa Stack. And the reason that I'm looking for this script, it won a contest called the Blacklist in 2007, which is a Hollywood contest where unpurchased scripts kind of get promoted by the heads of the studios. It's like, what are the 5 best scripts that you read this year that you didn't pick up, you know? And so this was one of the scripts. The conceit of this script is that it's about an attorney who he's a junior partner at a law firm, and in order to get into the senior ranks of the law firm, he finds out that they play this game where they're trying to bag all of the pretty young new women attorneys and interns and last week I saw that ABC News had reported that as a story about Matt Gaetz. And I think that the movie is in production right now at MTV Paramount. So I've been looking for the script because I thought that it would be kind of interesting to kind of float that and let people know that that's what's going on, because it's clearly the plot of a script of a screenplay that's in production, and it's being sold by ABC News as a news story. In one of these, sources tell us that blah, blah, blah kind of reporting style. So jumping back to Eric Clapton, I have no doubt that, if they can't find something on him, they'll just make it up anyway. The reality is that the Wrecking Crew, which was primarily black, did most of the music for most of the hit songs in the 1960s anyway. So
they were really great backing group. I mean, the Beach Boys, I think Glenn Campbell played in Wrecking Crew for a while. Carolyn Kay was the bass player. I can't think of her name. Great bass player. So many great songs that came out of California. That was the backing group. The Monkees, they did all those backing tracks.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. What else do you want to talk about? Tracy, did you have some things that you wanted to ask?
No, you hinted that Michael's into the Tic Tacs. I mean, he hinted it.
Yeah, that was it. So transitioning from music over to UFOs for a second. Yep. Michael works on another podcast, and you can feel free to pimp the podcast. Michael and Michael had a guest on the show that was presenting some interesting firsthand information about UFOs And then this week he came back on the show and took back everything that he said. And I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched a few minutes of it, and I was astounded by the kind of temerity of the guy. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I'll talk about it. The name of the show is Hidden Truth Show. Jim Breslow is the host. I produced the show. Jim and I have become friends over the time that I've worked on the show. And Jim's not a conspiracy guy. He's an official story guy all the time. So we agree on a lot. We disagree on a lot. For example, he doesn't think Epstein killed himself. So I'm just going to leave that there. But we've done a lot of different things. And Jim's initial success was based on a deep dive on the Las Vegas shooting. I was not involved with the show at that point. I came on almost at the end of that deep dive, which was 35 plus episodes. Wow. We did a few after I came on board, but most of the bulk of that work was already done. And during the course of that deep dive on Las Vegas shooting, this gentleman, Mike Turber, came around and he did some work on the shooting that was rational and, kind of interesting. And Mike's a nice enough guy. I mean, we had lunch on several occasions, had drinks on a few occasions after the show or before the show, whatever, amiable guy. And like I say, the stuff that he had for Vegas Shooter was rational. Anyway, Jim, not being a conspiracy guy, not being a UFO guy, there's a lot of stuff you've got to get up to speed on when you start talking about these subjects in front of people. So Turber tells Jim, hey, this thing, this Tic Tac thing, this UFO thing that's going on, I've got some info on that. So Jim calls me, and what was this, a year or so ago plus, something like that. He goes, hey, Turber's got some stuff. He wants to talk about these UFOs. Do you know anything about this? And I was like, I know. Yeah. So he has me call Turber and do a little pre-interview. And at the time, and I told Jim this, after we got off the conversation, I was like, Jim, in 20 plus years of UFO research and conspiracy stuff, this is the first time I think that I've spoken to an intentional disinfo guy. And when I say that, I don't mean that he's on the payroll of somebody, because I don't know. But I think that everything he just told me is nonsense and not true. And I don't know why he's telling me that. But, you asked me to do it. I did it. Here's what I think. And I gave him the lowdown on what I thought it was based on what Mike said. And there was way more to what Mike said than what he told in the show, but that was plenty. And but anyway, so we did a show. He made really outrageous claims. We did a second show, and he made some more claims. And
like what? Like just
well, he claimed that the Tic Tac device, which was a white oblong object that was seen off a naval carrier in 2004 off the coast of.
And there are videos that the United States Navy has authenticated, right?
Yeah, there's 3 videos. One was from that. There was a couple from the East Coast. So Tic Tac was kind of the most famous one, but there was another one called Go Fast, and there was another one called Gimbal, and those were on the East Coast. But anyway, that alone is actually a real story and very interesting, and it never stopped. I mean, they've got footage out now of some more things surrounding naval carriers in 2019. But in regards to Turber's story, he claimed that this white object that they call the Tic Tac was an American-made technology, and that really the only purpose was, this belonged to the Air Force, and the Air Force was just kind of trolling the Navy, and this was, in a kind of a task force. Now, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a war game situation, which I don't know. I thought that was a little out there and silly, but that was his basic claim. But if that wasn't enough, he then says that, not only that, but Trump was in the loop on it, and Trump sent one of those craft to North Korea to intimidate Kim Jong-un. And if that's not enough, he then had to go even further and imply that he had ridden on one. And we do the episode. So then we go across the street.
And he held his phone up. Didn't he set the clock on his, what?
He did, yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. He had the story that he created the story where it showed him going from somewhere in Southern California, which I believe was Rancho Cucamonga, because there's this whole story about where these things were created, Plant 42 and this, that, and the other thing. And if you see, here I am at this point at Rancho Cucamonga, here I am, 42 minutes, whatever it was, in Washington, D.C. And the way that happened was I was on board the Tic Tac. I mean, just absolutely outlandish story. So then, I'm like, whatever. I mean, listen, to be truthful, I have interviewed people, especially in my early days, that were telling just the wildest, craziest tales. And these days it makes me cringe because at that point, you're learning, and you might have a feeling in your stomach, wow, this sounds like complete crap, but maybe, well, whatever. But anyway, in this case, I was pretty sure Turbo was lying. But then we go across the street, we have dinner. And it goes on, and he tells us even more stuff, which I'm not going to repeat because it's just too wild. And so the next day I tell Jim, I'm like, man, it's exciting in one way, but it's just, I don't think that any of that's true. But Jim, not being a UFO guy or a conspiracy guy, but a friend of Turber's, because Turber is a kind of charismatic person on a personal level, and you enjoy talking to the guy. I think Jim wanted to give him, the benefit of the doubt. We ended up doing another one. And so that turned into doing a whole bunch of videos on the whole Tic Tac Nimitz thing, which actually did very well for us. It was very interesting. But pretty much uniformly, everybody who came after Turber said, no, that's not what he told you. That's not right, including Jack Sarfati, who is an actual physicist and is doing work on this type of anti-gravity, technology. So pretty much everybody was like, no, that's crazy. But anyway, here we go into the future another year, and people start talking about this again. So Jim texted me, and because he's out of town right now, and he said, hey, I'm thinking about having Turber back on the show. And at the time I was like, I really don't want to do that. Okay, guys, it's your show, but if you're going to do that, you've got to get him to come clean, because he's not telling the truth, and it's not good for us. And Jim, got him to come clean, and that's where it is.
So what did he come clean to? What did he do?
That most of what he said wasn't true. And now, he is saying that those craft are spoofing devices in the form of balloons. Basically, what he's done is he's taken some of Mick West's math and kind of adopted as his own. Mick West is a debunker. And listen, I'm not a math guy. It's been a long time since I've had higher math classes. So I don't know if this is right or wrong. As of yesterday, there was a huge fight between Turber and some of these other UFO people talking about all this. But his point is that in a couple of those videos, you're really just looking at objects that aren't moving that fast. Maybe. But the problem is, if that's the case, you kind of negated it all by lying initially. So me, once bitten, twice shy. I'm not having it. I'm not interested. But that's where it is. And he sent me another email today wanting to talk some more about it, but I don't want to talk any more about it.
Well, the thing that was interesting to me was the meta of it, in that when Turber, is that it?
Yeah, Turber.
What he was saying to Jim in the video that I watched was that he was doing it as a meta experiment because he wanted to see how much influence how far he could get that story to go.
Right.
And
I
so
don't think that's true. I think that he said that after the fact because everybody knew it was a concocted story. I honestly believe that.
So let's get, you're not a mind reader, so I'm not going to expect you to look into.
But I am a Scorpio, so that's
okay. So if not for the purpose of creating disinformation, are we just talking about pure ego or narcissism?
I think he's a curious guy, but I think it is largely self-promotion and making a name for yourself, putting yourself out there. And I really believe that's what it is. I don't think that he's part of some covert operation sent to.
But what's his business model? I mean, does he get paid for appearances? Does he have a?
He didn't pay.
Does he have a newsletter that he sells people, or?
I don't know.
Yeah, what's the grift? How's he making money?
Yeah.
Well, that's a question that I've asked, and I don't know, and we should probably just leave it there. I mean,
okay, yeah. Like I said, I don't expect you to be a mind reader, but
no, I'm not a mind reader, and I actually have very definitive opinions on what's going on here, and it's just the whole thing is icky to me. I don't like it, and I mean, he lied. He lied about it. I can't get past that, and it was an intentional lie. Whether he says it's a social experiment or whatever, to me, that doesn't It
Sure.
doesn't pass muster. I think that's bullshit.
Because Tracy and I, a lot of times we look at, at people who say things that may not make sense, and then we try to figure out, well, why would they say that? Like, what is the purpose of that? If that's clearly not true, are they, as Tracy said, what's the grift? Where are they making money on that? Who's paying them to say that? Why is that message something that's important? So when I look back at those shows that you did on that Tic Tac thing, it's like the alien thing is always a question, right? Because one of the things that gets floated about aliens, or whether or not you think they're extraterrestrial or a secret project using alien technology, the idea always is that it's going back to the day the Earth stood still, that if you want to create one world government, how do you do that? You create an invisible enemy like a virus that requires everyone to, pull together to play ball, or you create an existential threat to all of humanity that's, some kind of alien form, that's coming to threaten. It's the Will Smith Independence Day, myth. That those types of stories all at the end of the day kind of benefit the UN, and that one global government worldview. And so, when I look at stuff like that, I just think, oh, well, it's probably some downstream globalist program. And, based on my consulting, I consulted for the NSA at one point about 10 years ago, and I'm not allowed to talk about what I worked on, but I can tell you that I was working for a consulting company that worked 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 for the NSA.
Like Russian dolls.
I was 5 layers down, and I was doing all the work, and everybody above me was making more money than I was. And so to that end, I look at things like that, and I just wonder, well, yeah, maybe you only got paid $5,000 to go on Jim's show to go do that story, but there was somebody back in some office building in Arlington or something that is tracking all of the hits to find out where the ripple goes, and to look at that information. So
that's Peter, what you're saying, and he did allude to that. That was part of his story, is that he had been asked to do that by some shadowy company. I didn't believe that, because what he told me initially was not what he even said later in the first interview. So the other, maybe there's some truth to it. I don't believe any of it anymore.
Once somebody has established themselves as a liar, it's hard to believe the next thing that they have to say, right? But like, circling back to, I'm sorry, I'm saying circling back. Oh man, the idea that there is an ulterior motive, and ego is an easy one to default to. It's easy to look at people. Whenever I see people who are criticized for being, oh, he's such an egomaniac. They said it about Trump, Yeah. He's such an egomaniac. He's such a narcissist. He's such a this. He's such a that. And it's like, there's a method to the madness here. It's like these people are doing these things because they understand the way that media works and the way that people consume this stuff. And if you give people something like a hashtag that they can track across all kinds of different social spheres, then you can use those things to manage effectiveness, like how effective is this story. And a lot of these things get trial ballooned, right? They might have 500 different stories that they want to use in order to be able to figure out how they're going to move the needle in this direction. And so they get a bunch of contractors, and the contractors go out and they provide content, social media, they build websites, they do Instagram channels, they build YouTube channels. There's a lot of YouTube channels that I have discovered. Maybe we can look at some of those someday, Tracy, that really seem to be government programs. They have some British guy, and he's making he's making some bold pronouncements about the future, and they've got all kinds of stock video imagery that's put together, and the writing is always really good, and the music is always really good, and the production is always really good, and then you look at the channel, and you look at all the videos on the channel, and you wonder, who made this? What is YouTube real? Are they really getting enough views? You look at it and it's got like 1,600 views or something. It's like there's a lot of production value here, and they're not getting a really big audience. Is that what's really going on here? So I don't know. I'm, you can put a tinfoil hat on me, but I look at a lot of these things and just think of them as programs.
If you go on Twitter and you look up, he goes by this moniker 5x5 News. If you just look for that on Twitter, you're going to see what everybody says about it, and it's pretty much all bad. And the Tic Tac, that whole story, the real part of the story, is very interesting to me. TTSA is interesting to me, and I don't really know what to make of those characters.
What's TTSA?
To the Stars Academy. That's what's his face, the Blink 182 guy, Tom DeLonge. That's his thing,
right?
That's interesting to me.
I think Tom DeLonge is in the video that I watched yesterday is associated with changing images of man. He's tangential, like.
Listen.
He wasn't born when the book was written, but he's connected somehow. Some relative of his is connected.
Well, he's a legitimate UFO. He's a guy like me, loved rock and roll, loved reading about UFOs. So that part I know is true because I know people that worked with him. And so I believe that he's legitimately interested. The criticism that people have of him and TTSA is that, they're in it for the money. Well, maybe. I don't think there's anything wrong with making money on the investigation and publication of information. Mm-hmm. And when you do something like that, you may be wrong occasionally. But if you're playing above board and doing the right thing, I mean, my mind has certainly changed about things that I once believed. And as long as I think you're honest about that and say, yeah, you know what, I was deceived over here. I think I've got it figured out now. Or I just have more information now than I had then. So my opinions of what this is or is not has changed. So they're an interesting thing. Turber's trying to say that he's doing it because he believes they're just all about the money and they're manufacturing this thing that is not legitimate. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I find it fascinating. The UFO ET hypothesis has always been interesting to me. The fact that there's more and more of this information coming out. There's more and more of these pictures coming out. Like this thing, Jerry Big Corbett dropped this footage this past week of the green triangle. Some people whose opinions I respect believe this is just another camera artifact. They know more about cameras than me. And I know that I have in the past thought something was a UFO only because I didn't understand as much as like Peter would understand about photographing a point of light far away from me and how that affects shutter speeds and things. So, you have to be skeptical and investigate and try to get to the bottom of it realistically and not just want it to be a green triangle. But the fact that the members of government are ramping this up right now, that in itself is also very interesting. And I don't have an answer other than what Peter brought up. And if you want to go back to the UN, that's where Reagan did in fact make that famous passing statement about, how we would all be brought together if there was some outside threat. And that was in the 80s. But I mean, I love the UFO thing, but I just take it with a grain of salt now. There's just so much information that it's hard to discern. And also within it, there's so much infighting, which is just like punk rock and any other group that I've ever been in. I finally always wind up outside of it because I don't know. If there's a bunch of conservatives, I'm the liberal. If there's a bunch of liberals, I'm the conservative. If they're all punk rock, I'm the classic rock guy. It always ends up like that. And maybe that's just my contrarian nature.
Michael, can't you just get along?
Yeah, I can actually.
Yeah. I know you could. You were a fun guy to work with.
We had good times.
Yeah, we did. We sold lots of CDs. Anyway, so this brings us up to an hour. You like to keep it to an hour now, right, Tracy?
Preferably, yes.
Preferably, yes. And so, do we have any last questions before we?
I just wanted to ask Michael if people want to watch this guy melt down. How do you find The Hidden Truth? Is it on YouTube?
It's on YouTube, or just go to the Hidden Truth website. It's out there. I mean, just look up Hidden Truth Show, Mike Turber, you'll find it. And
this just happened, pretty much.
Yeah, this happened a week ago because Jim's actually out of town. We won't drop another episode for a week or two. We got a few in the can, but they're all not related to that. And Jim's a great guy. I mean, he's pretty intense. He is a former civil rights attorney, so a lot of times when he talks to people, he kind of cross-examines them, so which rubs people wrong sometimes. He's intense. He's a former lawyer, and he's also a skeptic of most things. Where he thinks I'm a little bit conspiracy theorist, and but he is a good guy. And over the time that I've worked for him, we've become friends, and I've learned a bit from him, and he's learned a bit from me.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's an interesting show.
Well, I will be checking it out, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same.
Indeed.
So, well, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Tracy. Tracy, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this. When Peter asked me if I would be interested today, I was like, absolutely. So,
well,
hope I didn't ramble too much.
No,
Indeed.
it's all right.
Indeed. All right. Terrific. Well, thanks, everybody. Like, subscribe, do all those things, and we'll see you later.
And I put Michael's info, at least his Twitter handle, in the description on YouTube.
Right.
Give me a shout.
And you can probably find the real truth. Is that what it's called?
The hidden truth.
The hidden truth.
It's on Twitter. It's everywhere. That's what Google's for.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye, you guys.